Thank you all for those four presentations. There's quite a bit to talk about here, but I also know people are kind of probably antsy and ready to eat some lunch. So let's do, I'm just going to invite the panel up. Let's do one really good question. So we'll see who feels like they've got it. And then please accost these individuals while they're trying to eat lunch. But no, that's all. We can talk over lunch. But does anyone in the audience want to? They feel ready? Okay. Eric Parr.
I just had a question. All of you are working with data and especially machine learning. And for me, the way I approach this is, it's a lot of, this is a cognitive realm, working with data. Machine learning it's a kind of modeling. And my question is, for you as artists, the cognitive realm is only like a small, section of the experience of being a human. It can only explain a small sliver of the world. So my question for you is, as artists, how do you make room for those things that can't be modeled? And also another question is, do you also find working with technology to be a bit threatening, where the cognitive part can threaten to take over the whole project? You know what I mean?
Does this technology work? Look, I mean, I can try to speak up, or you want this? Here, I'll just.
Go ahead.
No, thank you.
Well, I hope I'll take it will be my take on your question. So I think understanding exactly what you meant might be not what I will answer. But I think one of the big breakthroughs that happened recently was these generative models. Speaking about technical part, that's kind of, and generative in the sense that you don't ask questions about, like, you have some kind of a criteria to classify, give you an answer, but the machine can actually kind of create its own version of the world. And I think it kind of implies to some ideas in cognitive science about also brain science, about how we actually perceive the world. And in some sense, in order to understand something, you need to be able to imagine it. So, like these hallucinations, in the image domain, I think what the machine does, it hallucinates basically. Has its own kind of a maybe distorted, maybe partially correct view of the world, and then you use noise to trigger new versions, but they don't exist. You can say dreams. And in some sense, I think what we do also in some sense, in different ways, not only while dreaming, but also like now I'm talking to you, I have to imagine that you are there. If I don't imagine that you are there, I won't be able to perceive that. So the whole art of, our cognition and maybe consciousness, and then also creativity, is being able to imagine things. So I think this is kind of where the cognitive part, I think, is inspiring more than limiting, because I'm not exactly going to solve these problems, but just the idea that, perception of the world is actually recreating this in your brain. And then if you express this to others, that's even better. Yeah. It's kind of my take.
Okay, in my case, I approach it like, just like when I'm a human collaborator, or when I'm inspired by other artworks. So when I read a really great fiction, that inspires me to think about other visual images or interactive project, and that gives me an image that I want to implement. And sometimes when I work with technologies and studying them, that happens as well, just like reading those stories and watching movies. Also, when I work with human collaborators, I try to understand them first, and then see how I can respond. And just using the same method with technology such as machine learning algorithms, I think it's been working out for me. So I never been threatened by the technology. First, because AI is not smart. A 3 to 4-year-old child anywhere in the world would be smarter than any existing AI at this point. And also, it's when we feel threatened, that fear comes from not knowing what it is, just like what's happening with the coronavirus right now. But if we actually have many of conversations like this and understand what's happening, what it is, I think that fear will disappear and we'll figure out a way of working together.
I'll echo what my fellow panelists said in terms of like not taking it as a fearful thing, but taking it as more of like an opportunity or a tool to enhance creativity. Or but maybe like another spin on it is thinking about the power dynamic of how the technology is created and applied. And so one thing I try to be mindful from the creative side of the house is how to translate what I'm trying to do into like the terms that are most associated with like engineering culture, because I'm not coding myself the tools that I use. So it's important for me to sort of appreciate the language that that is there. So I have that credibility as a collaborator with the people that are building the tools, but then also to try to like trick them into doing things that empower more human creativity, and negotiating that space deftly is sort of a metric of my success.
I can only barely remember the question, but I would say, obviously I enlist humans in this process. Human intuition in collaboration, in collaborative hallucinations, communicated through symbols in narrative situations over time. I find these to be like infinitely rich environments.
When you're the last person on that panel, you get time to write a haiku like this.
I know, thank you, yeah. Well, but you know, the interesting thing about these machine learning systems is, you know, what we put in and what we don't put into the system, you know? So here we are, we're like all hungry. This room is vast and cold and the ceiling is uncovered. Ryan has avocados on his socks. Unsu has a sparkly jacket. Shlomo has a scarf that is artfully wrapped around his neck. These are things we might not have put into our model. They're immensely meaningful to me. And to think about how I process that intuitively, I mean holistically, I guess, and then something else comes out for me in response to another person in the context, in my case, of narratives and emotional dynamics is fascinating. So again, I mean, I'm sure there's someone out there thinking, I could build a system that could capture all that. Okay, great, you know, go ahead, do it. But we also have we got these people right here who like are already those systems. So deploying them in collaboration with these complex systems is where the really interesting thing happens in my money.
That's a nice note to end on. So thank you. Thank the panel, please. Let's.